And we are back again. My favorite thing to say again. When it goes into three parts, it's like,
Yes.
right? Exactly. Okay, so like we were talking about with the quality stuff, one of my favorite things I saw was the triangle, the good, fast, cheap triangle.
Mm-hmm.
Pat, the guy that taught me would talk about that 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Um, So when that got brought back up, whatever, a couple of years ago or whenever it came around again, I love hearing that because
It's great.
it's great for us, where you go pick one and then we'll focus. But it's also great for the customer where you tell me, right? Because you can't have all three unless you got a whole pile of money somewhere.
Right.
Um,
And
right?
most of them don't,
No,
and a
no, they
lot
do
of
not.
times, yeah, a lot of times, it's a matter of us really just honing in and lowering their expectations is
Just
if
making
that's
them
yeah.
realistic.
Yeah, making them realistic.
Yeah,
Yeah, we recently bid on a house in New Jersey, and I knew that the price for the house, just based off of the cost of the house and everything, that they had over designed the house,
right.
and they had selected some very expensive appliances and some pretty expensive finishes, etc. So I did tell my project manager going into the meeting, the way that you close this deal is not by telling them that this is the price and that's it. It's by, doing exactly that, the triangle. Clearly quality matters here.
Yes.
But so does money.
Yeah.
So what we need to do is we need to scale back on scope of work.
Yeah.
And, this is something that it's probably a conversation that I have with clients 9 out of 10 times, or they have the money and they, say, okay, well, maybe it is worth it to do this now since we're already doing all this other work on our, let's say, house, if we're doing a house,
Absolutely.
right? So if you're already going to plaster the ceiling, which is popcorn, we do a lot of that,
Yeah.
then, and you're going to do the living room, and you're gonna go through the hassle of having all that dust in your house for, like, at least a couple days or a week,
Yeah.
depending on the size of the living room. I've seen some big houses out there.
Yeah.
Um, then you might as well do the other main common areas and sections in the house, right?
Mhm.
I mean, yeah, it's gonna cost you a little bit extra now, but if you already gotta move out of the house to do this,
Yeah.
like,
And
why not just do it once?
a lot of those costs too are mobilization costs. Like
Mhm.
to get a company to come out to your house for 5 days, that is the majority of the cost itself.
Oh my God, God
And
bless
then
you. Like, I don't
doing the
think
work.
people know what a mobilization is
No,
a
they don't
lot of
get it.
times, particularly smaller companies. So you have no idea how happy I am to hear you even
Yeah.
say mobilization costs. We have a mobilization fee on our contracts. If we have to mobilize more than what we said in the contract,
Mhm.
then guess what? You are paying that set mobilization fee.
Yeah.
And if we have to adjust for inflation because you're using a construction loan, I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, it is what it is. And I speak like I make billions of dollars, and
Yeah.
people always say that to me, like, oh, you act like you make so much money and like all this other stuff, and I'm like, no, I really value my work, my time, and I want to make sure I pay my team what they are worth,
Yeah.
right? Like, without losing my shirt at the same time,
Exactly.
because we all are here to make a living, but we're also here to, like, have fun and to enjoy life. So yeah, I want to make my customers happy. Yeah, I want to meet them where they are with their budgets. But if the scope of work doesn't meet the budget and you want super high quality work,
Yeah.
then something has to give. And sometimes that's time, right? We had a
I
project.
was just about to say that. Time
Yeah.
needs to be budged sometimes. Sorry, what were you
Yeah.
gonna say? You had a
Yeah,
project.
no, well, sometimes people don't have the budget, and, I can't bring in, like, a quick crew to, like, go in and out. So I just tell them, like, we'll have to just phase this, and I'll have like myself and a helper do it. And just know that I run a business. So if I'm going to come in here, it's
Yeah,
going to be for like 4 hours a day. And then I'm going to go do what I need to do. And then I'm going to come back for another hour or two. Like, it's not going to be like having a regular crew, and yeah, you'll get a better rate, but
totally.
it's also going to take us 5 times longer because I'm doing it,
Yeah.
you know?
It's we got into a lot of that last year where money became a thing, and
Mhm.
it was like, okay, well, we turn down work all the time. This looks gravy for me. It's all easy, but it can't be the number one priority if the money's not there. So then you
Right.
take these things on, but then they tend to drag on, or then there's even further money issues. Like we got into this kitchen, and she had $30,000 to totally redo a kitchen, all new cabinets. I installed a sliding glass door out the back of her house. Like we did a lot of work in there, structural work on the back wall, and we started taking the walls down, and there were pipes outside of the wall where the cabinets were. So now,
That's
now
pretty common.
amazing. Yeah. And like a big
Yeah.
cast pipe, like we're not
Yeah.
moving it. So now we're strapping walls, and we were obviously on a timeline, but those types of things, even when you're doing good for people, it's when it's a timeline thing, you have to stick to your guns about it, or
Mhm.
you need to really be serious about the discussion about price when you get started.
I
Um,
I think a lot of times too, that's why builders, tradespeople, crews prefer to do new builds
yep.
because they're not going to run into these unforeseen issues,
Yeah.
And so I typically tell people, like, if you want to be a remodeling contractor or if you want to be a restoration contractor, which is a lot of times what we find ourselves doing is like very detail oriented restoration work where you're trying to mix a little bit of old with the new, you
Okay.
know and you just have to go in with a different attitude, and when you do those estimates versus a new build, that contingency money needs to be like 20-30%, not 10%,
Yeah.
or 5%. And it needs to exist. Like, it can't be like contingency money that will figure out how we get it
Yeah.
just cuz. And what I have found, and this started by using a software solution that we utilize for project management on smaller jobs, is asking for the money to be put up front in escrow for the project on larger projects,
Yeah.
is a great way to ensure that the client knows that you're not running off with their money to go fund another project and you're trustworthy. But B, you also ensure that they have the money,
That's
because
right.
if the project is $100,000, um, that's still a lot of money, right?
Oh yeah.
And so you want to make sure that that goes into some sort of something. And then, at least there's security on both ends. For the smaller projects, that we're going to go in and out in like a week, uh, we'll obviously stagger payments and
Yeah.
ensure that all the line items that need to be on the contract are there. But those are easy jobs where we could usually just be in and out, and it's me and a helper, or like one other person and a helper, or if time is an issue, we'll send 3 people there, and somebody that just sweeps. you know
Yeah.
and we laugh at the just sweeps, but to be honest,
It's a big
uh,
part of it. Yeah.
dirty job sites are I'm just such a stickler for dirty job sites.
I'll tell you, I'm a very messy. I'm very messy, and it's just because I'm like go go go, and I would much rather clean a couple of times a week than every day because I can just get running, and it doesn't bother me. But if somebody is cleaning the site that I'm working on, I am like feel like a superhero when I walk onto that site. Like you're just like everything's clean. There's nothing in my way. There's no scrap. There's no anything. It's just this kind of free space to play in as opposed to trying to crawl over stuff. And it's
For us, it's a safety thing.
oh, definitely. Yeah,
It also, believe it or not, you just made such a good point. Like, so you got to crawl over stuff, you got to climb over stuff. That takes time.
that's exactly. Yeah.
So you're
Yeah.
still wasting time,
Yeah.
so again, going back to the cost of goods sold,
Yes.
and company time and production. And I sound more like a business person than I do like a tradesperson and a contractor. And
Yeah.
I realize that and understand that. But that is why I got into this business. It is because I realized that there is a huge gap in our industry where people
Yeah.
just don't know how to run a business.
Yes.
And I'm not saying I know everything about running a business. In fact, I had many failed businesses before I finally have this amazing, successful construction business, and
That's how
not
you
just
get.
one, but
Yeah.
two amazing construction businesses that are both thriving and very successful. So, truly blessed, but I failed.
Yeah.
I failed a lot.
Yeah.
And in my 20s and early 30s, much like everybody else, I thought I knew everything. So do you honestly think I asked for help? I probably would have
No.
been way more successful if I had, listened to some of my
Yeah.
mentors, which I didn't even realize these people were mentoring me back then, but they were, you know. So I was very hard-headed, very
Yeah.
hard-headed. But one thing that I will say is that when I got into the construction industry, it was very shortly after I was doing the bodybuilding. And when I felt like I didn't fit in, or somebody on a job site tried to make me feel less than,
Yeah.
I always took on that like superhero outfit, of, well, remember when you didn't belong in the gym because you couldn't
That's right.
even grab the bar to squat,
Yeah. And then you were
like,
competing on a stage.
yeah, exactly.
And it.
And I had to tell myself that, right?
Hmm.
Like, and here's this guy who's been here doing the same thing. No shame, no, not throwing any shade,
Yeah.
but doing the same thing for the past 25 years, breaking his back, and has not asked for additional training, wanted to excel, because a part of it goes two ways, right? Part of it is, yes, the bosses, but it's also the tradesperson or the people in the field. Look, if you want to excel, you need to like ask and say, hey, I want to learn how to do what you do.
Yeah.
Or, in 5 years, like Sean, I'm just going to be straight up with you. Like, I'm going to work with you, but I just want to start my own business,
Yeah.
and hopefully I can be one of your subs, because I want to help you grow your business. And you know what? I come from a family that never grew their business because they were too scared that their
Yeah.
workers would steal their business or
Hmm.
steal this, that, whatever. But I want the people that work for me right now to go start their own businesses,
Yeah.
because they're going to make kick-ass subs, and then they're going to be my subs,
That's right.
and I train them. So yes, go do it, but not right now because I really need
Yeah.
them.
But we need you today still, but
Yeah, but a lot of them aren't even there yet, right? Like I would say not a single one of them is there yet, myself
yeah,
included. We are a team for a reason.
exactly.
Everybody specializes in something very, very unique and has a very unique skill set, even within the back office and project management. So for me, really, really, really important, even now, to work with coaches and
Yeah.
to work with people who are guiding me and helping me with this brand, and I got to tell you, I mean, I get imposter syndrome. I
Uh,
thought I should quit yesterday. It
Same.
happened to me literally yesterday. I was crying. I was like bawling. Like, I was like, I can't do this. I'm not cut out for this stuff.
They're gonna
Like,
figure me out.
what? They're gonna figure out I don't know what the heck I'm doing. Blah, blah, blah. And then I
Yeah.
just remember that I just had like a walkthrough with like some of New York's finest engineers and architects, because I
Yeah.
was like hand selected by a developer to go walk a space, for them. Anyway, like I have to remind myself, like, do you
Yes.
realize who you were in the room
Yeah.
with? Like, what is wrong with you? But
But
it just, for me, it's like I'm never good enough.
yeah, but
And
that's what makes you so good at everything. I'm very much the same way where it's like I don't ever dwell on what I'm good at. I'm dwelling on the things that I'm not as good at and the things that I want to get better at. Because if you sit around saying you're good at something, okay, but where does that get you? Right? So you have to be growing and pushing. If you're not
yeah,
uncomfortable, feeling that uncomfortable feeling all the time, you're not going hard.
it's
Like
also
you're
so boring.
it's so fucking boring. Oh, first one of the whole episode.
You did good. You did good. You did good. That was good. That was
Poopy
good.
poop. All right. It
No,
is
but
very boring. If you're not doing difficult tasks, you
yeah,
have to be doing difficult tasks. Just about every time that I start something new, I have these moments the night before where I'm like, I don't know, I don't think I can do this. Like I'm sure I'll figure it out tomorrow, but like, oh my God. And then you get there and it's second nature. It's because you know what you're doing. And
I remember the first time I took a drywall job by myself.
yeah.
And the reason I did it was because the client was on a tight budget, and I myself was having, for the business, some cash flow issues because I
Mhm.
had recently had to purchase like a bunch of tools and different things.
Yeah.
And, it just wasn't there. And, I'd be lying if I said my business and my books were perfect. And anybody who comes on here, I don't care how large your company is,
Yeah.
like construction is a cash flow business,
Yeah.
particularly if you're contracting. So we've all been there, and even the huge companies are there. That's why they take 3 to 6 months to pay out.
Yeah.
Anyway, I digress. But, the first time I remember I'd called one of my mentors to
Yeah.
come and bid the job, right? Like I was part of his drywall crew. Him and his wife owned a remodeling company, and they used to like bang out developments. And, I would work with them on the side whenever I didn't have project management work so I could, you know, learn about the business, stay busy, whatever.
Yeah.
I just, like any other entrepreneur, if I wasn't busy here, I had to bring in money somehow.
Yes.
So, I was a part of this, like I said, framing drywall crew. And I called him. I had a pretty big job, and I called him. Ceilings were all over the place,
Hmm.
vaulted, whatever. And he was like, "Who did the framing?" And I was like, "We did." Called him after we had framed. And he was like, "You did the ceiling?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "Then why aren't you doing this job yourself?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, well, I'm not a pro and blah, 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 whatever." And he was like, "Go grab the laser."
Yeah.
you know and so I'm there with him, and like I grabbed the laser, and he was like, "All the walls are straight." He was like,
This is the
and
easy part now.
yeah, yeah, he was like, "All the ceilings are straight." He was like, "All your lines and that soffit by the window is straight." He was like, "Those are the only lines that matter." He was like, "Now let's go to the next room." And I was like, "Oh, well, we didn't frame that room, that was pre-existing." And he was like,
Mhm.
"Does the client know that?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, of course. And we've got photos and, documentation and
Mhm.
blah, 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 whatever." He was like, "Are we going to float it? Like, what's the plan?" So he like helped me price out the job,
Mhm.
basically in terms of like material and everything else. And he was like, "Look, I can refer you a crew, but they're going to bill you about 9 grand for this job.
Yeah.
And you only billed the client, whatever you billed the client.
Yeah.
Let's
But
say I
probably
billed the
half that. Yeah.
yeah. No, I didn't. I actually
Okay,
billed the
good.
yeah. I actually billed the client thing for that particular job. It was like 15 for,
Jeez.
yeah, with material
Yeah,
and
okay.
everything included,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and the cleanup crew, because I always have like a extra labor on those jobs.
Yes.
So they know that they pay a little bit extra just because that extra labor is there to clean, and it's worthwhile. Just again, safety, cleanliness,
I,
just
y-
job morale, whatever. They know if they work with us, like that's a part of the deal. Like
totally.
we won't take the job, you know. So
Yeah.
anyway, but because I had priced out the job at 15, but I had misquoted the number of boards I was going to need because of the
Okay.
angles. And it was either cut up a bunch of boards and try to tape over it, which, is a nightmare. I almost cursed there. you know, so that's a nightmare.
Yeah.
Or bite the bullet and buy an
Yeah.
extra 20, 25 boards
Mhm.
and do it right.
And th
Um,
and then you won't do that again because you felt the hurt of the miss, right? It's yeah,
I,
I learn everything the hard way. I have to for some reason.
that job I did. I did learn on that job though that I could do it by myself. The
Oh, yeah.
ceiling was the hardest part.
Yep.
And because it was framed properly
Yes.
and when we put up the drywall, all the screws weren't sticking out and we put
Mhm.
enough screws up there to like actually hold the
It's
dang
not
thing.
bouncing around.
Not
Yeah.
bound. Yeah. So anyway, because we did the drywall installation, the taping was pretty seamless. And
Yeah.
the most difficult part was really the corners in those little triangle angles, which I wish I would have like learned about those little paper corners that you
The
keep
th
posting
the
about.
three-way, yeah, I got some right here. It's,
Yeah, I didn't know about those, but I didn't need them. I have to give like a huge shout out to the taping queen, actually.
oh, yeah.
She helped me out a ton on that job, and I don't think she knew that that was the first job that I'd done by myself, but she had been coaching me for a year on my drywall work.
Okay.
Like I would send her videos and she would tell me, no, you need to add a little bit more on either side and then skim it out,
Yep.
so that you don't have to sand so much. Or she like sent me my first roller. Oh man, that was a game changer right there.
Yep.
you know, just roll that baby on and then, just come back in with your 12-inch
Yep.
or, one of the big boys and you're good to go. So yeah, I learned so much from the taping queen, and she, I think, is one of the people that's like such a good mentor online
Yep.
for tradespeople in general. But I sent her photos and videos of the job, and
Yep.
she's like, your crew did such a good
Yep.
job.
Well
And I was
done.
like, I was like, I did that. And she was
Yeah.
like, oh my God, your work has gotten
Yeah.
so much better in the
Yeah.
past year. And, I screenshotted that because that's the taping queen that said
You
that.
you
And
have to keep those accomplishments because it is an
yeah,
it's just like
it's
seeing
little things.
a
Little
certificate on the
things.
wall. It really, really is though.
Yeah.
Yeah, and, we just booked her for, second week April. Uh,
She's
she does a
awesome.
lot for the community. It's,
She really does. And, that was, like I said, that was the first job that I did by myself. After that, I started taking, like you said, one job a week. And here we are bringing in $3,000 to $5,000 a week for
yeah,
me and a cleanup guy,
yeah, pretty good
or
money.
me and a helper to put up the boards or whatever I need to do, help me with framing while I put up boards on the other side, whatever. And meanwhile, my construction management business in the city and in Brooklyn is running itself. And the project managers are doing their thing on their own.
Doesn't that feel good?
Yeah, and I got earbuds on and they call me occasionally.
Yep,
And the same client we're working for in one place is the same client we're working for over here. So they
yep.
don't care that I'm double dipping as long as the work is done.
But to them,
It,
I don't think they see that as double dipping. I think they see that as somebody we can trust at both,
well,
sometimes.
last year, I mean, I literally pretty much just worked for this client and like
Yep.
their family alone. And that was like all the jobs that we did, with the exception of some of our retail clients. Like
There's nothing wrong with that. If
they
the
kept us
relationship is good,
that busy.
yeah,
And then this year, same client, and if he watches this, he's gonna know I'm talking about him. But same client, his sister, like this month alone, referred me 3 people.
yeah,
And so I am saying this not because I want to gloat or brag, but I am saying this because much like Kayla and her husband,
yep,
much like that tile chick and Chris,
yep,
much like you, much like any of the other people that I know you're going to have on the podcast, but also that are part of our community,
Yeah.
the reason that our brands are the way that they are or as successful as they are, I for myself do not have a ton of followers online. I know you
Same.
don't
We don't either.
really
Yeah.
either, but I don't need to because
Exactly.
95% of the business comes from referrals.
Yeah.
And it comes from one or two real estate brokers and their network, which huge,
Yeah. That's enormous. Yeah.
I could stay busy on the real estate broker alone. And we did for most of 2021.
Yeah.
And then in 2022, we met another client actually through the real estate broker who then referred us to all their family, friends and family. So then we basically mostly worked for them. And then this year, we actually, for the first time, are having some of our clients that disappeared during the pandemic
Okay.
come back and start
Beautiful.
spending money.
Yeah.
And so, that's where like I'm like, okay, yeah, I know interest rates are high
Yeah.
and I know a bunch of other things are happening, but there is still cash out there and there are still people spending money. So, yeah,
There's an enormous amount of it too. If you actually take a look at the statistics that are out there, it's like this is a lot of money being spent still when you're thinking everything is
particularly for
calm.
remodeling.
That's kind of where my head was going with that is, and the nanny suites, these smaller homes that they're adding to homes or basements, but it's essentially a second home in the house.
Yeah, we
Um,
call them accessory dwelling units.
accessory dwelling
Yeah,
units.
in
Yeah.
America.
Um,
Or granny flats. What's
oh,
another name for them?
yeah.
Anyway, basement apartments, granny flats,
Yeah.
detached garages, ADUs, accessory,
ADUs.
yeah, ADUs.
Yeah.
Very, very
Um,
popular. Yes, you're
Ma
right.
Manny just had somebody on his podcast about that, and it was a good listen. But they're like that. Some people may have something in their head when you're saying that. Like some of these are $250,000 builds, $500,000 builds. Like they get pretty excessive depending on the people that are coming to you.
Oh
And
yeah, absolutely. Even on the finishes alone.
yeah,
We have levels to what we bill for
yes,
drywall. And obviously for me, having highest quality like work is of most importance, even if we're doing a commercial job, because I
hmm,
want to be able to send people to the jobs and say, hey, we did that.
yes,
And it still looks amazing. And there's no dripping of paint on the walls,
yeah,
or you can't see the seams, you can't see
yeah.
the tape.
The extra
There's
mile
no,
was
yeah, there's
taken.
no
Yeah,
gaps in between the baseboards and the boards. And, like we
yeah,
took the time, the floors are level for God's sake, just little things that people don't pay attention to because quality, for whatever reason, there was a time when craftsmanship mattered, and
yeah,
somehow that went in the toilet when they started to do these like I call them farms of homes
yeah,
across the country,
yeah,
and uh, duplicate buildings like buildings in New York or in Chicago and other places. Like creativity and like craftsmanship like died.
yeah.
And so quality work, I mean, you literally have to like beg for it. And when we go look at places and I remember one time, this sounds so horrible. My tech guy is not a good painter or
Okay.
wall finisher. Okay, but he's pretty handy.
I like where this is starting.
Okay. I couldn't make it. Him and I do a lot of jobs together. And he typically will do all the technology stuff, but he
Perfect.
typically has to run wires. So I typically have to patch walls and, anyway, long story short, quality matters to both of us. So one time I couldn't make it to a job in time because I was still waiting for the building department to show up for an inspection somewhere else.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
we had a deadline we had to meet. And he was like, do we have any rollers here? Paint? He's like, and do you have a sanding block? And I was like, dude, like, you can't do this. And he was
Yeah.
like, bro, I have seen the quality of work in this building and everywhere else.
Yeah.
I can sand, polish, and
Yeah.
paint this wall to bleep
Yeah.
customers' standards,
Yeah.
And I laughed so hard, and I was like, "You know what? Fair point.
Yeah.
Like, just make sure you prime everything."
Yeah.
And I, like, walked him through a couple of steps and, it was fine.
The thing that I like the most about return work is it tells a couple of things like the quality of work that you do. And then when you're getting return work on return work, that screams that your quality is there. But you also start to build relationships with your customers. So when
Mhm.
you come into a place where you're like, you know what, this is going to end up being a little bit of an extra here because I can foresee there being an issue, there's no discussion. They just
Done.
trust you. At the end of the day, if they get a bunch of quotes in and you're way higher, they don't go, "Oh, they're gouging us here." They go, "What did everybody else forget?" Um,
Usually that is the case, and
yeah,
so I prepare my prospective clients and or people who wanna do business with us by telling them ahead of time that we are not the least expensive contractor, and we're also not the most expensive, but depending on what their wish list looks like, we can be the most expensive.
yeah,
And the main reason is because we take a lot of time and energy on the pre-construction side of things,
mhm,
and pre-construction management. So my construction management agency still will manage my contracting jobs. you
that's perfect
know?
though. Yeah, it's all in-house
S
basically.
yeah, so I wanna make sure that the quality, of communication, if I'm out in the field and I'm working, teaching guys how to finish walls, or doing it myself because we wanna run 2 jobs at the same time or
Mhm,
whatever, then I can't answer the phones. I can't answer the emails.
that's right.
I can't order the supplies. I can't be the person who's reviewing the architects or replying to RFIs or submittals,
Yep,
checking quality of packages. Like, I just can't be that person.
yep.
So I have other people that I trust and I delegate to, and I don't micromanage. Because if I have to micromanage, then I might as well do it myself.
And,
so,
what we were talking about, like the broom pusher, and then we were talking about the people that do good work, but they're bad with the money. It's sometimes you're not working for someone. Sometimes you're part of a team that works. And
mhm.
and I think people need to differentiate that sometimes because there is this like look down on I work for someone else as opposed to I own my own business. But being part of a team that makes the whole better, nobody's owned. Everybody is working together, right? And I
It
think there needs
is.
to be a lot more of that. If you're no
You
good with
know,
money, you should have somebody around that's good with money. And back and forth, right?
yeah, no, I wholeheartedly agree. I mean, earlier today I was speaking to some of our software partners and, some of them are kind of catering to like similar, audiences, whatever. And there's nothing in it for me, but I was like, hey, let me just connect you guys because,
Totally.
we're in the industry and you guys are trying to do something for the industry and maybe you guys can brainstorm together. You know
Yep.
what I mean? And it's a team, right? Like we as an industry, we're a team. I'm not competing with you. You're not competing with
Yeah.
me. I'm not competing with all the other, developer and construction managers here in New York. There's plenty of work to go around,
Yeah.
you know. And I'm also, while I am competing with other drywall companies, I'm not. I am different than probably 98% of the drywall crews out there. I mean, most of them sadly, are not going to come in on a price per square foot, reading the plans,
No.
nor are they going to come in with questions about the framing and or with, additions on their contract
Yeah.
for having to repair framing or having to repair drywall. I hate it when the owners think that they can put up their own drywall and it's going to be cheaper. No, it's going to be more
It's now it's
expensive.
twice as much because you gotta fix it all, yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
It kind of what you're talking about there a little bit, I don't vouch for anyone anymore, period. But when I see a handshake that should happen because both sides are really going to benefit from it, I always set up that handshake. Where
Mhm.
it's just like, I know he is the top of his game and you are the top of your game, and you could both use each other. I don't want anything to do with it, but you guys should probably have a handshake at some point here. And I think
Yeah.
that's part of that community again, where it's just important. You know,
Yeah, I typically will leave the introduction with, and I'll let you 2 take it from here.
totally.
Um,
Yep.
you know,
And
because
that's where it should be left.
I don't wanna be a part of it. I don't want referrals for
Yeah.
jobs,
Yeah.
that's not
Yeah.
that's not what we're trying to do here.
Yeah. This is a win for you guys, and if there's a win for me down the road from it, great. But that's
If
not what
not,
this is about. Yeah. Yeah. I think successful people do that, and I think that's why we're successful. Because it's you build a community of people that trust you, and it comes back eventually sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't. But you sleep good at night because you did a good thing, right?
absolutely,
Yeah.
Go Giver, I don't know if you've read the book, I forgot who the author is.
Yeah.
But I didn't know about this book. I would presume it's probably one of the many, many books, self-help books that either my father or my grandfather were involved in, or this is just something that they learned through the church.
Yeah.
But we give because we know spiritually that that's just the way the world
Yeah.
works. And I am of Christian faith and follow the teachings of the Bible, and I'm not trying to preach to anybody here, but there's a spirituality to business. There's a taking a leap of faith
Mhm.
and trusting that it's gonna work.
Yeah.
Even building something from nothing, like, it's magic, but it's not. You have
It
to
is
be
very
that.
planned magic.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you have to be a visionary, right?
Yes, of
You have
course.
to be able to take 2D drawings
Yeah.
and really be able to build it. There's a
Yeah.
lot of great architects out there that can draw, but they can't build.
Right.
And there's vice versa. So I say that it's spiritual in that we are taking dirt and literally building something from nothing. Um,
I
but
love
yeah.
that. That's another good spot here. We're gonna stop right there.